Listen, let's just get right into this thing because it was a long day. There was a little bit of a weather delay. But before we got to the conclusion of this event, there was the subplot that everybody had been keeping eyes on. That was one, Justin Thomas and his quest to make it into the FedEx Cup playoffs. And he played well. I mean, it was back against the wall. He shot a 68 and he played the final couple of holes in kind of Jordan Spieth-esque fashion, Patrick. He makes an eagle on 15, gives it right back on 16. Then he yanks one left into the pine straw on 18, where he's absolutely done. No chance. This guy's season's over, right?
That hour and a half was pretty much his entire season in a nutshell. You have some great golf there on 15 where you roll in an eagle, you throw a little fist pump, and then right when you think he gets momentum, he comes back, he blames the wind on the next hole and makes bogey. And he tries all the heroics on 18 with the 300-yard hook over OB and Unreal. All the fans and galleries, nearly chips in, falls on his back. Everyone's memeing him. But for me, when you think about this Justin Thomas round and what he needed probably one more birdie, potentially two. He hit only 5 fairways today. He didn't birdie the easy par 5 on the front. He was playing defense a lot of the times with wedges in hand, and you got to call a spade a spade. We came into this week where the betting favorite was Russell Henley, and he couldn't finish inside the top 10. Justin Thomas couldn't finish inside the top 10 of this field. So it really was, yeah, he showed a lot of grit. He showed a lot of heart, but he also showed a lot of the flaws that were in his game throughout this season. And it's the reason why he's not in the FedEx Cup playoffs, because when you can't find fairways, you can't attack pins like you want to. And when you do get momentum, it's halted immediately, and the short game can only take you so far. He actually looked pretty good on the greens this week, which is pretty disappointing if you're Justin Thomas, knowing that you putted pretty well. So it's disappointing. I still want him on the Ryder Cup team just because I think it would be hilarious for the U.S. team. Throw a nice little wrinkle in there. And I saw someone throw out the idea of him playing on the DP World Tour a couple starts maybe coming up. I don't know if he's going to do that, but I wouldn't mind that. So it's just a disappointing season all around, and it comes to an end in a disappointing way.
Well, Greg, before we talk about where he actually finished in the FedEx Cup standings, which is one shot out, the shot that he hit. So, Josh, do we have it? Go back to that pine straw shot that we have. How would you describe to our audio listeners what Justin Thomas did here on his second shot at 18?
Okay. So there's the trees. There's a tree to the left of him and a tree to the right of him. Mm-hmm. He is right in the middle of those two trees. That, I believe, is about where maybe the left side of the green is, if you draw a straight line through there. And then if you look out to the right, you see that tent, and there's an overhanging tree that is nearly all the way to the tent. So, I mean, this has to be like a 45 degree. I mean, this has to be a boomerang. It has to snap significantly far. And he's doing everything he can to start it out to the right to get around the tree and hook it as hard as he possibly can. There's also very limited foot in pine straw like that. So you will get some odd, you see this at the Masters every year, right? You get some different body gyrations when you're dealing with pine straw, especially when you're trying to work a hook that hard. So yeah, basically in order to hook it, you got to get the face closed. So you got to get your bottom hand over the top of your lead hand, which most of the time you're trying to fend that off when you're playing. The top players are trying to avoid that and keep their bottom hand under their top hand. And all of a sudden you got to do the opposite. So you get this kind of whirly bird finish, and you don't have any stability underneath. And so you get this body situation. But he hit a great shot. It ends up coming up short.
He pulled it off 34 yards short of the green.
Yeah.
He hits a chip that I thought was in the moment.
Yeah.
If the stick is, it hits the stick. If the stick is out, does it drop?
See, it bounced right before.
Yeah. I think
So
it
I don't know. Really hard to know. But it's not one of those where it's rolling right up to it like a putt, because it's bouncing. So it's hard to know. But I think Patrick was right on point with JT in this round today. That he fought hard, and it's what we love about Justin Thomas is he competes. He wants to be on that Ryder Cup team. He wants to make the playoffs. He wants to win the tournament. He's competing till the very end. But not only did he only hit 5 fairways, that to me isn't uncommon for JT even at his best, but it's 8 greens, right? That's the real penalty that this leads to. And so, I mean, he ends up leading the field this week in strokes gained around the green, but loses strokes approaching the green, gains less than a stroke off the tee. And this is just a big departure from the Justin Thomas brand of golf that we know and love. And that's where there's been a kind of a outcry that, hey, this is what we needed to put JT on the team, even though he came up short. I don't think that's the case at all. I think Patrick is right. This showed what JT has done all year. And you need more in the tee to green department on this Ryder Cup team, in my opinion.
Par on 18, no good. Justin Thomas finishes 71st in the FedEx Cup standings. That is 1 spot and 8 FedEx Cup points out of the playoffs. Ben Griffin earns the last spot. The first 2 men out, Justin Thomas and Adam Scott. A couple of big names. Patrick, there you go. If you're watching on YouTube, you are seeing the final bubble right there. All right, Patrick, on a American schooling grading scale, A, B, C, D, F, how would you grade Justin Thomas's season?
F.
Yeah. I was going to say D minus, just to be nice.
And look, I'd love to give a shout out to loyal listener Richard Hunt. Patrick called it months ago. JT is doing, quote, too much.
Oh, so you're calling out a guy who's calling you out as correct.
Yes. Thank you, Richard. I appreciate that.
Thank you, Richard.
I hate to, blame or, do this. I'm not right very often, so we have to celebrate these little victories. But when you're someone like Justin Thomas, you're coming off a season in 2022 where your lone win was a 7-stroke come from behind PGA. I know it's the PGA Championship victory, and then you think about the year before was only the Players Championship. It's really, for me, just the decline in the iron play and getting himself into the mix at all. He didn't contend in one tournament this year.
That's the problem.
Not one. It has been since the Canadian Open 2 years when Rory McIlroy beat him and Tony Finau. That's the last time he was in the mix on a back 9 on Sunday. That is wild. That's 14 months ago.
That's the problem. These guys, they just get themselves in the mix and they figure it out because they're good enough to figure it out. JT never contended.
No. So when you don't have a single chance to raise a trophy, I have to give you an F.
Is this the playoff system we want, Greg? Just Adam Scott, Justin Thomas out, Ben Griffin, and JJ Spawn in.
Well, I'll put it this way: as a fan and a viewer, it makes the Wyndham Championship a whole lot better, right? Your quality of players, the people who are on and around the bubble are much more interesting to watch than it is at 125 in a typical year. So that adds some value. It adds some importance to the Wyndham, which I like. I like the aspect that it's a challenge to get into the playoffs. I think that is, I don't think it's a problem that some really good players don't get into the playoffs. Now, does that mean they should lose their card? No. So I also like how they have an opportunity in the fall to, get their starts the next year. And we know Justin Thomas, in all likelihood, with his world golf ranking, will still probably get into all the designated events. And even if the world ranking slips and falls outside the top 30, I would imagine he'll have some sponsors exemptions coming his way. But that being said, I can also see the side, if you're a player, where that's a little bit frustrating. Adam Scott did not have a bad year. He had a pretty good year. He didn't play enough. Shane Lowry also missed the playoffs. Very consistent, very steady. Had a number of great performances. I mean, there were countless times I looked at Shane Lowry and said, yeah, he's a great play this week. But it's those T12 to T20 finishes that have piled up that don't get the job done anymore. So I think it adds an element of intensity, and I think it's good. I can also see why the players wouldn't like it, but I think it enhances the viewing experience for fans.
Yeah, this is like, a diner on Sunday morning. You got to keep the turnover rate. You got to get the butts out of the seats. You got to get some new people in there. I could not care less about this. Turn them over. Let's go.